never forget, I'm a senior at Cornell, and I have disability employment policy, and I have Professor Golden, who, you Google all your professors, and then you Google it's a picture with Professor Golden and the Clinton administration. That's a picture with him and another high-ranking official. So he's an eminent person in the country in the disability category, but you don't realize how wonderful of a person he is because you know. I always called him Professor Golden, even up until he passed. I just couldn't bring myself to call him Thomas. He was Professor. I idolized him. And I'll never forget, he took a liking to his individual students. When he found out something about you that made you an individual, not just a number in the hundreds of kids that had his class, but when he found out I was in elected office, he made it his mission to find out why I ran, where I was running, what he could do to help me along my journey. And I'll never forget, he changed my life because he made me promise him. He didn't give me a choice. He said, if you run for higher office when you graduate, you are going to fight for people with disabilities to make the equitable world that we deserve. I applied to get my doctorate and I reached out to Professor Golden and I was a little hesitant. And finally, with that big smile, he's like, all right, spit it out. Tell me what you want. And I asked him, would you be able to write me a letter of recommendation? And this thing was so glowing and so specific. And this is what makes him a great mentor. I didn't give him talking points. I didn't give him my resume. He just knew about my life.
I'm really happy to say that the legacy of Thomas lives on, not only through all the students that he's connected with over the years as an instructor himself, but also how we go out and connect with people in the future. I know that every day when I walk into a classroom, I think about the lessons I've learned during my time with Thomas and my time during the graduate programs, and think about how I can make the classroom a better place for the students there. And Thomas was such a huge part of how I wanted to join academia, why I wanted to join academia, and who I've become as an instructor and just as an overall person today.
I think there's a couple things that stick out in my mind as what was most valuable about his mentorship. And one is definitely that he didn't give me all the answers. And I appreciated that because as frustrating as that was for me sometime, I really grew from the experience and it challenged me in ways that I've never been challenged before. There were so many aspects of his mentorship that I just found so amazing, but really the fact that he allowed me to grow and really pushed me to do my best is what I will remember the most from it.
I think that the quality that captures why Thomas is such a fantastic mentor is his unwavering commitment to elevating his students. And I know that from my personal experiences, but I also know that just from seeing how he interacts with other students and other faculty. And Thomas's disarming personality really allows students and mentees and friends to always feel like they can speak with Thomas about any of their problems. And when you go to Thomas with a problem, you go in thinking that you're talking to him and telling him what's wrong, but very quickly, even if Thomas doesn't know or doesn't have the solution readily available, my problem became our problem, and he became my biggest cheerleader in trying to advocate for a resolution of that problem. I was applying to law school, and I was just very disheartened about the process, and I wasn't sure if I was going to get admitted. And I decided on a whim to talk to Thomas about it and see what his thoughts were, rather than just offering to write a letter of recommendation and seeing where that goes and submitting it to the law school admissions office. Thomas went above and beyond, and he made my dream a reality, very literally, of attending Cornell Law School. And he did that by not only writing a letter of recommendation, which is, of course, nice and helpful, but he also started to contact other people who he knew might have a connection to the law school. And from that organizing effort, by the end, I had a whole team of people that Thomas had put together to to help me get ultimately admitted to Cornell Law School.
It was in my freshman year that I really was able to take my lived experience and realize I could focus on it as a research discipline, an academic discipline, and a potential career. And it was really Professor Golden who really encouraged me to see that as a possibility through his course. He kind of saw me as a future protege. He kind of took me under his wing, both in the classroom. He was definitely very engaging and always brought just such a joy to his classes and made me see that this was a path for me. But then also on a personal level, he, went beyond being a professor to being a mentor. So I would come to his office hours and talk about how can I get more involved in disability policy and advocacy. He would provide suggestions of resources. All of that culminated in my time doing a credit internship during my time at Cornell, where he served as my faculty advisor for me interning in the US Senate with the former Senator Harkin. And he just was such a great resource in both the knowledge of how do you take what I learned in the classroom to put it into practice on Capitol Hill, but also the personal struggles with that as well. So I, at the time when I was interning and he was my advisor, I was going through my own mental health journey and was diagnosed. And he was one of the first people who saw the signs of my declining mental health. And, he believed in my potential at a time where I didn't believe in my own. And he really encouraged me to see not only the value of the work that I was doing, but the value of who I was as a person. And I wouldn't be here, honestly, if it wasn't for his phone calls when, I was in DC, he was still in Ithaca, and he was calling me, encouraging me, helping me find resources and mental health providers, and ultimately helping me make it through that semester and through my time at Cornell. Honestly, where I am today and the work I'm doing in the disability community is all a testament of his mentorship and his involvement in my life.